Good morning. This is the time and place for the Planning Hearing Officer's hearing for July 31st, 2013. My name is Kristen Asp, and I will be conducting the hearings as hearing officer. We have 3 cases on the agenda today, and relevant exhibits are posted on the panels located directly behind me. If evidence is presented in the application and at the hearing meets the criteria described in the findings for a case, the planning hearing officer can either approve or impose conditions for approval on the case in question. If the findings of fact are not evident, then the request will be denied. Public notification, public notice. Notification for this hearing was accomplished by use of public notices which were mailed to property owners and occupants of property within 500 feet of the subject property, physically posted on the site in question, and placed in the local newspaper. The hearing will proceed as follows. The description of the application or request will be read. Reports and comments received from other city departments or other letters of communication from interested parties will be read. The case planner will make a brief overview of the case, give analysis, and make a recommendation. The applicant will be asked to come forward, stating both name and address, and will be asked to present the case within a 15-minute time limit. Others in the audience who wish to speak will be asked to come forward, stating both name and address, and will have a 3-minute time limit. The applicant will then be given the opportunity to make closing statements, if desired, in response to testimony given by the preceding speakers within a 5-minute time limit. The hearing will be closed and the case will be taken under submission. After the hearing, the decision will be prepared in writing and will be in the form of a letter sent to the applicant and to all persons who responded to the public notice by either speaking at this hearing or by submitting written responses and have provided their name and mailing address. The date of the decision will be the date appearing on the letter, not necessarily the date of this hearing. That's important for appeals. Under the appeal provisions of Title 30 of the Glendale Municipal Code, the decision may be appealed to the Planning Commission within 15 days of the decision of the date, and notice of appeal shall be filed with the Building and Safety Division located in this building, MSB 101, room 101 of this building. Speaker cards. If you wish to speak, please write your name and address on one of the speaker forms which have been provided at the front door and submit it to our planning staff. I would also like to inform everyone that the official proceedings of the planning hearing officer's hearings are recorded on tape as part of the public record. So to get started with the agenda, we have 3 cases, but the first one will move very quickly because there is a request for continuation. The first item on the agenda is 2345 Honolulu Avenue, Joselitos, conditional use permit, case number 1301874. It's an application for a conditional use permit to allow the on-site sale and service and consumption of alcoholic beverages in an existing full-service restaurant. There is a request for continuation from this date till August 14th, 2013. And so I will go ahead and continue that case without further public notice. And the second item on the agenda, the second and third items on the agenda are related but will be taken as individual hearings. We will start with the first one, which is Walgreens. The address is 101 East Glen Oaks Boulevard, case number 1311290. The applicant is Kelly Hayes. The case planner is Velia Zematitis, and I will turn it over to the case planner to give a brief presentation, and we'll start from there.
Thank you, Ms. Asp. The case before you is a conditional use permit. It would be conditional use permit PCUP 1311290 for project address at 101 East Glen Oaks on the corner of Glen Oaks and Brand Boulevard. This conditional use permit is being requested by the applicant Walgreens to allow for the off-site sale of general alcohol that would include beer, wine, and spirits at a new drugstore. The existing vacant one-story building, approximately 25,000 square feet, is proposed to be subdivided into 2 retail tenant spaces. One would be the Walgreens site, which would essentially provide 12,400 square feet of drugstore area, and the westerly portion of the building would become the new Trader Joe's site for a store of 11,500 square feet. The 25,000 square foot building was originally constructed in 1963 as a market and coin cleaners, and the property was most recently occupied by the title company and is currently now vacant. Retail uses are permitted in the C3 commercial zone, and the proposed use, which would be a primary use of a drugstore, is permitted in the C3 zone and is also consistent in the general plan. The proposed sale of alcoholic beverages at the proposed drugstore is not expected to be detrimental to the public health, safety, general welfare, or the environment. And the retail sale of alcoholic beverages for off-site consumption would be a complementary addition to the primary drugstore use. The project site is located in Census Tract 3011, which allows for 4 off-sale alcoholic beverage control liquor licenses. There are currently 2 in the existing census tract. Walgreens and Trader Joe's would make numbers 3 and 4. Based on Part 1 crime statistics for the census tract, there were 69 crimes, which is 15% above the citywide average. Comments from the police department indicated that this particular proposal is not anticipated to create any major concerns for law enforcement, and police submitted several suggested conditions that were incorporated in the list of conditions of approval as part of the submitted staff report. The sale of alcoholic beverages is not anticipated to adversely affect or conflict with the adjacent uses or impede the normal development of the surrounding property. All 4 corners of Brand and Glen Oaks are currently developed with commercial uses and are zoned C3 low scale, which allows for low scale retail, service, restaurant type uses. Now, this particular proposal is simply for the alcoholic beverage sales as part of the CUP application. The tenant improvement of the entire site obviously includes certain off-site premise improvements along Fairview. And I would like to note at this point in time that there was an administrative exception that was granted for a new drive-through on the east side of the building. This administrative exception was approved on July the 23rd to allow for a 90-foot linear length drive-through as opposed to the code required 100-foot drive-through length. This administrative exception proposal was reviewed by Traffic and Transportation, and the application included studies as to why a shorter drive-through length would be adequate, and so it was approved with regards to the various findings that were made and the submitted traffic and queuing length study. In addition to the proposed new pharmacy drive-through, the project does entail the demolition of an existing single-family residential dwelling. If you'd like to come up to the board to show. Sure. So as you notice here, just to orient everyone, this would be North Brand Boulevard, this would be East Glen Oaks, and Fairview. So the entire site is approximately 111,000 square feet. There are existing driveways on Glen Oaks, on Brand. Currently there is a single family home directly adjacent to the building that is proposed for demolition. The new drive-through pharmacy will go along the east side of the building, and there will be a 2-way drive-through, or I should say a drive aisle, located on the project site, which currently features that single-family residential dwelling. In addition to a new driveway, and this would be for vehicular access only, there is a proposal to have loading spaces along the rear portion of Fairview, of the rear portion of the building itself, Currently, that is a vacant lot with overgrown weeds and debris that will be turned into a loading area for Walgreens and Trader Joe's. The truck haul route has been worked on for the last year or so with traffic and transportation. So this is something that has not been done just recently or without quite a bit of review and analysis. The truck haul route essentially would start from Glen Oaks Boulevard, travel northerly through the site, up the two-way new drive aisle, and then head east or westbound to the west along the loading area to the back. The trucks would then unload at the rear of the building and then proceed outbound, traveling west along Fairview. So the trucks are prohibited from traveling through the residential neighborhood to the west, to the east and to the north. And that has been approved by both Walgreens and Trader Joe's and traffic with the recommendations from the Traffic and Transportation Division of the city. So all trucks will be prohibited, again, from traveling eastbound through the residential neighborhood. Traffic and Transportation has also analyzed the driveways to make sure that the actual vehicular traffic is reduced along Fairview. So as part of conditions of approval and as part of the revised submitted site plan, you'll notice that there are indicators and physical barriers for prohibiting individuals from making right-bound, or eastbound, I should say, right-out turns along Fairview. So all traffic would have to essentially exit the site on Fairview and travel westbound on Fairview over to Brand and not through the residential neighborhood. Also, traffic would be limited to along Fairview, making a right-in, so it would be left out, right-in turns on the new Fairview driveway. And again, this is solely in regards to making sure that the residential neighborhood to the north and to the east are protected from additional traffic. With that said, all adequate public and private facilities, all utilities are in place. The project also consists of including additional landscaping in the parking area. The parking lot will have 124 parking spaces based on code. For retail uses, 102 parking spaces are required. So there will be essentially a surplus of 22 parking spaces provided on site. There is a parking exception that was granted by the redevelopment agency for the restaurant across the street, which is currently operated by Noi Pits, or known as Noi Pits. They have 19 spaces as part of their lease agreement for valet parking in the evening and off-site hours. So essentially this would be somewhat a little overlapping in the evenings, but then when the Walgreens and Trader Joe's closes, Noi Pits restaurants would then be allowed to go ahead and use the parking lot for their purposes as well. This lease agreement expires in 2016, so in several years. Based on the findings that have been made, the analysis, and especially a lot of the discussions that went in with traffic and transportation with regards to the changes to the actual site, staff recommends approval of the conditional use permit. And again, this would be just for the conditional use permit for the sale of alcoholic beverages for off-site consumption as part of the Walgreens. That concludes staff's presentation. I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. And I will just note from the file for interdepartmental communications, which are comments made from other divisions. I think Ms. Emetitis went over the most significant comments, which were from police and from Public Works Engineering. The remaining comments were all just related to standard code requirements for the application. I guess now I will call on the applicant to come up and tell us a little bit about the project.
Thank you. My name is Kelly Hayes. I'm with Evergreen DevCo, and we represent Walgreens. Before I start, just want to say it's taken us a while to get to this point, but staff has been fabulous to work with, and we really think that we've all kind of come to an agreement that all of us are comfortable with and feel good about, and will allow all of us to move forward with the project, which we're really excited about. Through this project, we were tasked with proving some findings that Velia went over, but most importantly, that the project is not detrimental to the public health and safety, that we wouldn't adversely affect the surrounding area or adjacent uses, that we have adequate public and private facilities, and I think that we've, through Velia's presentation, have shown that we comply with all of that. The liquor is only for off-premise consumption. It's an accessory use to the drugstore. Typically, Walgreens has only about 100 square feet dedicated to the liquor sale, so it's a small area. The surrounding area is currently mostly zoned C3. Right in the four corners of that area, the site is currently zoned C3, so we think it's a use that's compatible with the area and with the neighborhood. And as Velia mentioned, we've worked really hard to make sure that the truck delivery routes and the traffic and the access are all compatible with the surrounding neighborhood. It's an existing site. It has all the facilities that we need. The building's there. The utilities are there. We're really just going to be making upgrades to the site with some additional landscaping, enhancing the elevations, and maintaining the parking lot and really making it vibrant again. We have worked hard on the delivery and access, and this is, of course, repeating what Velia mentioned, but we are very aware of the concerns that the neighborhood has about our access and about how traffic will flow through the site. And so I think with the westbound turn on Fairview Avenue and keeping all of that traffic flowing that way and keeping the delivery access all flowing westbound so none of it can go through the neighborhood, I think is very helpful, and hopefully the neighbors would agree with that. I want to keep my presentation brief. I know Velia covered a lot, so I'm happy to answer any additional questions if there are any.
I do have a few questions. First of all, what are your planned hours of operation?
Walgreens typically open from 8 to 10, and the pharmacy often opens an hour after and closes an hour before.
Okay. And what...
I should mention too that they will adjust hours of operation just based on demand too. So they're not going to be open at 3 a.m., but if there's not a demand, they might close at 9 if they're fine.
Okay. But it's not going to be a 24-hour...
It's not planned for a 24-hour
24-hour operation, so that was kind of where I was leading my question. So at this point, you plan on 10 p.m. Do you have any idea or have any kind of feeling for when Walgreens expects deliveries? I mean, so speaking of this
Sure.
proposed truck route and whatnot, when do they typically make deliveries?
Deliveries will occur.
And I know that that's a moving target.
It's a moving target, but they're definitely not coming before 6 a.m. They're definitely not coming after 9 p.m. It's during reasonable hours, and their large 65-foot truck only comes once a week. So it's the smaller trucks, the Frito-Lay truck or the ice cream truck or something that make those more frequent trips.
Okay.
But the large semi-truck only comes once a week. For an average store. This store could be crazy, insanely busy, and it might need to come twice a week, but...
Okay, but that's a typical...
That's a typical store, yeah.
Okay. And so if, for example, if there was a restriction on delivery hours of like a 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. or 9 p.m., is that something that Walgreens would be amenable to?
Sure.
Okay. And I guess going back to the physical improvements that are going to be made to the parking lot, and I know that similar questions will be asked of Trader Joe's, which is the following hearing. So I'm not trying to
And
be
yeah.
not trying to be repetitive, but I just want to make sure that we know we're talking about the same site. A house is being demolished to accommodate a drive-through for a Walgreens pharmacy. And then some restriping and landscaping are going on.
Correct. So we'll basically, the house is being demolished, and it is primarily for the drive-through, but it is also for truck and delivery access at the house, because it would be very difficult to make deliveries without having that access through the site to get the trucks through. We will not be completely tearing out asphalt and replacing it, but we'll do they call it a mill and overlay. We'll basically grind down the asphalt and then overlay it with a new coat of asphalt, restripe. There's some additional landscaping going in. We'll put new light poles in the parking lot, restripe everything, and then the whole building will get an entire new facade.
Okay, so since you mentioned light poles, that's one of my other questions. I know that there's some existing light standards that are out there. You're proposing some new ones or just relocating?
We're proposing new ones.
Okay.
It'll be a similar configuration.
Okay.
But just to get, better, higher efficiency light poles out there.
Okay. And I noticed, at least on the site plan I'm looking at, and maybe I'll point out here on the larger one, these are the light standards
Yes.
that I'm noticing.
Uh-huh.
And so it looks like they're pulled away from the adjacent residential.
Yeah, that's the plan, to not have anything too close to the residential.
Okay. And if there was a condition about screening the lighting so that it points directly downward to prevent any
We typically make
spillover.
sure that we're very close to 0-foot candles at the property line, so that
Okay.
we're not spilling light onto other properties.
Okay. And the recommended conditions of the truck delivery route and the suggested conditions, if you could maybe talk more to the north driveway, not necessarily the exit of the delivery trucks, but the one way in, one way out, how that's going to be signed, that's going to be striped.
Yeah.
How is that?
So, I don't know that site plan, does that site plan not properly reflect that curve on that? Can't see very well on that driveway.
Something.
This particular site plan that's put up on the wall, yes, it is the most recent one that does
Okay.
show.
It's hard, I have bad eyesight.
It shows all of the public works requirements for those driveways along Fairview.
More than welcome to
Okay.
address the site plan if that.
Because the plan is to, yes, so we have, kind of some curbing here that will direct traffic out this way, and that would make it, difficult to.
So an actual physical,
a physical curb, yeah.
as opposed to just a sign that says, please don't make a right turn.
Right, and we will also do signage. So we'll
Okay.
have both out there that says no right turn. And then on this one, we would put signage that says, do not enter, that this is kind of a loading zone only kind of thing that would, make this curb cut be for customers. And then this area over here is only for delivery access. It's not for the access of customers.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that and humoring me.
No problem.
And then I'll probably ask the same question of Trader Joe's, and I don't anticipate this, but just have to ask. There's a bigger trend to do related to alcohol, to do tastings and that kind of thing. Do you anticipate doing anything like that in the future? This is strictly for
No.
just off-site. Sale.
Yeah. And if you see anything with Walgreens doing tastings, they do have one or two what they call flagship stores that they've
Okay.
created. One in Los Angeles kind of recently, but it's a much larger location that serves sushi and has all this for, but
Okay, and
this
that's
is not a
separate
flagship
conditional
store,
use,
so
a separate
just-
conditional use permit would be needed for tasting, but I just wanted to clarify that
But just
that's
in case
not
people
part
have
of-
seen that in the news where Walgreens does do something like that,
Okay.
it's a kind of a different concept for them that's not going to be.
You're not anticipating that
No,
for this
no.
location and as part of this application?
Right.
Okay. And you've taken a look at all the suggested conditions and you're happy to agree with those at
Yes.
this point? Okay. Thank you. I will get to some of the other speakers.
Okay, thank you.
Next, I will go with Randy Stevenson, followed by Michael Rosenbaum.
Morning, Ms. Ash, city staff. My name is Randy Stevenson. My offices are located at 1111 North Brand Boulevard, Suite 200, also a property owner within the mailing radius. As I'm sure we all know, Walgreens has a number of stores that operate in the LA County trade area. To my knowledge, they've never had any issue with the sale of alcoholic beverages for off-site consumption, nor has there been any publicity, again, to my knowledge. That particular component of their store is consistent. It's complementary with the service and products that they provide in all of their other stores, and I support the approval of the CUP. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Michael Rosenbaum.
Good I
morning.
live in the neighborhood, so my concern has to do with the traffic patterns and the amount of traffic that's going to be there. We already have some problems with parking on our street because I live on Fairview Avenue.
Okay.
Yeah. People from Nestle, for example, park on our street. And there's mostly apartment buildings that are on our street. In fact, I think the only house that's on that street now is the one that's going to be torn down. And so we're concerned that with this Walgreens and Trader Joe's, that there's going to be even more of a problem with the parking on our street, also with the traffic that's going down our street. Our street is the only street in the area that doesn't have speed bumps. So there's lots of people that are using our street apparently to avoid the speed bumps, and they go pretty fast down that street already. So this will just be more traffic, I think, in our area because how people are going to be trying to get into this new facility. A question I had, a couple of questions actually. Villia actually gave me some tips when we had an earlier meeting about this. And she talked about restricted parking for our area, and I looked into that a little bit. It requires that we get a petition up for the people in our neighborhood. I think we have to get 75% of the people, something like that. And also there's a fee. And the question I had was, what is the fee? Because on the site, I went on the site, and you have to actually go through the whole process before you find out what the fee is. And I was wondering, does anybody know what the fee actually is?
I certainly don't know off the top of my head, but I know our Traffic and Transportation Division would be happy to.
So
to
if I
help
called
you
them
walk
up,
through
they
that.
would give me the answer to that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So the two questions I had one was about the restricted parking. The secondly is the whole thing about the speed bumps. I was wondering if maybe a speed bump put on Fairview Avenue might help a little bit with our street because of the extra traffic that's going to be on it, in addition to what we're already experiencing right now. And I don't know if that's something that could be considered along with this, putting a speed bump on Fairview Avenue, and that might slow the traffic down a little bit. The other thing I was going to ask about was the accesses that are to this site. And I know it's going to be a problem for people to get in there because on Brand Boulevard and on Glen Oaks Boulevard, those streets are divided there. And so people are not going to be able to turn easily across traffic into the Glen Oaks and the Bland Boulevard entrances, so they're going to have to go around the block or something like that in order to be able to make a right-hand turn on. So I think that's going to affect the traffic that's there, and that needs to be considered. And then they're going to be coming in, there's the third, because the third access they have is the one on Fairview Avenue. So I would think that would increase the traffic that's going to be on our road. And they've already done something about the right-hand turn from the exit on Fairview Avenue.
Okay, so you did understand the circulation that's proposed.
And I'm happy to see that. The question I had was, they still have an
Last question.
access from Fairview Avenue at that point, right? In other words, you not only are they exiting, can you exit from there, the facility, the site, onto Fairview Avenue, but they also have an access.
That's correct.
So the question I had is maybe if that was a one-way and it was only an exit at that point. So you would have the pharmacy, and you could have that, and you could also have the deliveries. You would have that. And then they would be exiting, and also people who park in the lot would also be able to exit there. But if you didn't have the entrance there, maybe that would alleviate some of the traffic that's going to be at that, on our road at least anyway. So that was a question I had as to whether or not that's something that could be considered. I know that they're talking now about putting some kind of barrier to prevent them from making a right-hand turn onto Fairview Avenue. Is that a barrier that's going to go actually out into the street? Or is that
If
just a
you'd like to
barrier
answer
that's
that.
going to be, I mean, I don't even know what a barrier would be if it didn't go out into the street. How would that bar people from making a turn?
Again, the physical barrier that is required by the Public Works Traffic and Transportation would essentially be a physical barrier in the form of a curb cut so that the cars would not be able to turn right onto Fairview. They would be directed westbound, turning left onto Fairview. In regards to the exit-only situation, this was discussed with the Traffic and Transportation. Now, if you don't
I mean,
mind,
you've
I'm going to
already
come
made an exception in that this is supposed to be 100 feet wide, right?
No, this
that what it is?
The administrative exception is only for the queuing lane length of the pharmacy.
Okay.
So that would be not related essentially to the physical barriers that are required for the driveway on Fairview. In regards back to the original question, do you mind if I step up to the site plan to explain?
Yes.
The physical barriers, and this plan is actually showing it better. The physical barrier would be an off-site improvement located within the public right-of-way, not going into the street, but essentially from the sidewalk area.
So is it going to block our sidewalk there?
No, it's essentially, you're going to have a sidewalk continue on, except as opposed to having a driveway that fans out in either direction that allows for turns to the right. It's actually going to require individuals to make left-hand turns only. Individuals are allowed to travel onto Fairview. Now, those people that are traveling onto Fairview, they're going to go to Trader Joe's or Walgreens. They're only going to stop and go to Trader Joe's. This particular use, at least in traffic and transportation, was not analyzed to, they're not anticipating any additional traffic traveling on Fairview because of this, because the individuals that are traveling westbound on Fairview or eastbound on Fairview are going to the site itself. This would allow them to go into the site. The reason being, individuals traveling from the residential neighborhood up above to the north are prohibited due to an existing island from making a left-hand turn into the project site.
Right.
So if you're traveling anywhere in the residential neighborhood to the north or to the west, if you're traveling down southbound on Brand Boulevard, you would not be able to enter the site easily. Well, you're physically prohibited from entering the
Yeah, I
site
know.
on Brand. So therefore, they would be making a left-hand turn onto Fairview, traveling down Fairview, and then going into the site.
Yeah. So that's going to be extra traffic there.
In this particular portion,
Right.
this particular segment, right,
Right.
located, that's zone commercial,
Yeah.
that does not have the residential yet.
And you know, because we discussed this before at the previous meeting, that there's a light on Dryden and there's a light at Glen Oaks. There's no light in between to turn on to Fairview. And so it's not going to be easy for them to be able to do that because of the traffic that's coming on Brand Boulevard already between Glen Oaks and Dryden. You know, there's already traffic that's going there. So they're going to have to be making a turn across traffic to get into Fairview Avenue to be able to use that entrance. And also, like
Thank
I was trying, so my time is up.
Yeah.
Okay.
We need to keep moving.
All right.
Thank you. The next speaker is Roseanne.
Do I get to speak again when Trader Joe's comes up? or-
You certainly can.
Okay, great.
Fill out a speaker card. Roseanne Cullaba, is that right?
For the Bonds one on the Glendale.
Good morning.
My name is Roseanne Calaba, and I essentially have the same concerns as the previous speaker. I am concerned with the parking and the congestion. And there's a church there on the corner of Fairview and Brand, so that's more, nobody's ever brought that into consideration. And it's a lot of, and I'm not, it just, that's basically, it's a lot of business going to go on there that wasn't there for years, and it's very bad for the people who live that area because they're going to be inconvenienced by turning here and turning. They're used to going a certain way home or whatever, and they're going to be restricted. They're going to have all these things put into place that they have to go this way or that way, or then the traffic and the parking, and it's going to be bad for the people who are already there. That's the same concerns as the previous speaker. And, you know, it's just not, it's nice for business. Yes, we'd like to get that corner going, but it's taking away from the people on Fairview who were peace and quiet and had their location. It's going to be difficult for the people who live there to put up with all this congestion and inconvenience.
Thank you. At this point, I'll call on the applicant again, or representative, if they'd like to address any of the previous speakers' comments.
I think Vilya answered some of the questions well enough. I think just to address the Fairview question on being able to turn left, you know, onto Fairview and access the site down to the south, I think that actually restricting that access is going to create more traffic on Fairview than allowing it. If you restrict the southbound turn into the site and do not allow people to turn southbound, then they're going to be driving through the neighborhood, coming around up Glen Oaks and accessing the neighborhood that way.
If it was an exit only?
If it was an exit only, yeah. You know, then they're going to be making that circular route to get in. But if you allow them just into the site, then the traffic pattern stops there, and they come into the site and get what they need.
Because they're either going to travel on Fairview to enter the neighborhood.
Right, if they live there.
Because they wanted to, or I'm
Or they're
coming
gonna come
directly
into
to
the
the
site.
site, so I have the
Right.
opportunity to turn left into the site at the back end.
Right, turn right into the site, yeah, if they're coming in off Fairview.
If they're coming off Fairview?
They're coming
yes, they're
south down
turning
Brand,
right,
yeah,
yes.
and turning right, then they're at their destination. If you restrict that access, then I think what they're going to do is come down Fairview, then head south, and then come up Glen Oaks to access the site that way. So I think, you know, I mean, we're open to suggestions, but in my opinion, I think that just it actually increases the traffic through the neighborhood rather than restricting it. So, again, just wanted to throw that out there, and happy to answer any other questions if there are any.
And then just maybe to point out for the parking concern, that the site is a little overparked by our code standards?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that in mind, I will take this case under submission and close the public hearing for Walgreens and move on to the same property but different application for Trader Joe's. The location is still the same, 101 East Glen Oaks Boulevard. Conditional use permit case number 1314877. Again, this is an application also for a conditional use permit to allow the off-site sale of alcoholic beverages at the proposed Trader Joe's site in the C3 zone. So I don't know if there's much change in a staff presentation other than to discuss Trader Joe's.
No, actually, as stated, this is a conditional use permit simply for alcoholic beverage sales for off-site consumption at Trader Joe's. Same location, same parking situation, same circulation proposed, same truck delivery route that it's already been discussed. The Trader Joe's proposed will occupy 11,500 square feet. This is not one of their larger stores. It's actually much smaller than the one that was recently approved and constructed in the Montrose area. They will be utilizing the same parking lot, which will have 124 parking spaces, when 102 spaces are required by code for all of the uses on site. Trader Joe's has also agreed to the on-site and off-site improvements required by the traffic and transportation individuals as well as the Public Works engineering staff. Other than that, the staff report included an analysis of the project site in regards to the new proposed market, and staff recommends approval of the conditional use permit for off-site sale of alcoholic beverages.
Thank you. And just to I think reiterate, you mentioned it in the previous hearing, but police department comments
Yes.
of CUP, would you mind
In regards to the
repeating that?
police comments, the particular census tract is essentially permitted for off-site sale licenses, alcoholic beverage sale licenses. Two are currently existing. The Walgreens and Trader Joe's would be the third and fourth. So in terms of the number of alcoholic beverage control licenses, it's consistent. In regards to the crime statistics, it's slightly elevated, but the police specifically stated that they had no concerns with the two proposed uses going in, and they submitted recommended conditions of approval that have been incorporated in those presented to you as the planning hearing officer.
Okay. Thank you. I will ask the applicant to come up for Trader Joe's. Brett? Morning.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having us. Number one, I'd like to clarify we are not requesting wine tasting. I've
Okay.
gone over that multiple times with the company. I know they're doing it at a lot of their stores. The
Okay.
store will not have wine tasting.
Okay.
Also, as the planner stated, by the way, I'd like to say thank you for all the hard work that was done on the project. There was a very thorough report with all the traffic studies and driveway circulation. A lot was put into this project, so we do appreciate all that work. This is a proper use in this location, commercially zoned property. Retail store is proper in a C3 zone. Alcohol sales will remain ancillary to the main market. We're overparked per current code requirements. Hours of operation 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. daily. Again, no wine tasting. One item I would like to bring up is that with a slightly raised crime statistic for the area, we do not believe ABC will request a letter of public convenience or necessity, but I would like to request one anyway, to keep us from having to come back at a later time and request that after the fact. So it would be a finding of a letter of public convenience or necessity that the alcohol sales will serve the public need or a necessity for the area. We believe it will do so, as this is an underutilized property. A new market in this area will help serve those neighbors and the nearby residential neighbors, as well as those employed in the area. Like we said, we're not over-concentrated. 4 are allowed to exist. Even with the approval of these 2 applications, we will still be well within the guidelines of the ABC. I'm going to keep it short and simple.
Okay.
I can answer any
I will
questions.
have a few questions similarly to the operations of Walgreens. You did state your hours of operations, you plan to be 8 to 10?
8 to 10. All the newer stores and even the older stores are all pushing to the 8 to 10 hour. It used to
Okay.
be 9 and 9 across the board.
Okay.
Now it's 8 to 10.
Okay. When, in your experience with Trader Joe's, when are typical Trader Joe's deliveries? So along the same lines as,
They usually come within
Previous
about a
hearing.
half hour before it opens, and we would agree to the same conditions that Walgreens has for delivery times. We would make it cohesive a plan for the entire property. Much better approach for the neighbors. We'll keep the noise down.
okay. Okay, we talked about lighting. Is there anything else you'd like to add? You've seen these conditions, you're,
We find the conditions reasonable and acceptable,
okay,
including the PD conditions.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker card I have is Randy Stevenson again.
Morning again, Randy Stevenson. My offices are at 1111 North Brand Boulevard, Suite 200, and property owner in the mailing radius. I'll reiterate my comments from that were related to Walgreens. Obviously, we know that Trader Joe's operates a number of stores in the LA County trade area. Never known there to be any issue related to the sale of alcohol. It's obviously an ancillary use and a function of the business and the products that they offer there, and I fully support the approval of the CUP. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I have no other speaker cards for this hearing. I have no other speaker cards. If you'd like to speak, please fill out another speaker card this hearing. Yeah. So-
My name is Roseanne.
Roseanne?
Right, Roseanne Calaba, and I have a question. There are some buildings that go to Fairview from this, from Brand to Fairview. There's like a doctor's offices or some. Are any of those properties affected with this development?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
The corner of Fairview and Brand, there's some more stores before you get to the Glen Oaks part. Not stores, well, businesses.
Mm-hmm.
Are any of those businesses affected by this development? Are you're just tearing down one house, you said, on Fairview?
I will maybe turn this over to staff, but my understanding is yes, just the one house, and all of these improvements will be done on the Walgreens and Trader Joe's site. There's no proposals for any changes to those buildings to the west.
The commercial building that's located on the southeast corner of Brand and Fairview, it's a low-scale one-story brick building that has multiple uses. I believe it's a hair salon. There was a therapist, meaning physical therapy and whatnot. That particular building is going to remain as is. It's actually located on a separate lot, so it's not at all part of this project.
Also, on these, in the future, do you intend to make it 2 stories and things like that on these?
No.
They won't ever be able to do that?
At this point in time, they don't have the required parking to
Oh, I
make
see.
any additions to the existing building. So at this juncture, nothing is proposed for that particular.
But they could certainly apply. I just want to make that clear.
The building that you're going to take away, the little house, that I think, from my understanding, thinking about it, it's going to be pretty close to a few, I guess, a few buildings on the side, on the next the next one over and the next one over, apartment buildings, small apartment buildings.
On the adjacent lots, yes, there are multifamily
Yeah.
multifamily units there.
Is there going to be like a big wall or something, or what, that's going to...
There has to be a 5.5-foot block wall provided, as well as landscaping along the block wall. So that is part of the proposal.
And so, but the majority, I guess, of my question is it's going to affect the parking and the people who are with the limited parking that it is, and it's going to be more limited now with the more traffic and so forth. Is that pretty much?
Everything that's been presented, that the proposed uses provide more than code required parking for the use
But, I
and
mean,
the
not
site.
maybe parking for the people in the buildings.
Correct. That's what this application is for.
Is it going to limit parking on the streets then? You said-
There are proposals
There are no
for
proposals.
parking restrictions on Fairview.
No.
Again, and as stated to Mr. Rosenbaum, that the neighborhood has the ability to apply for a restricted parking district at that
So
location.
the owners in the buildings would have to apply for restricted...
The residents of the buildings have the opportunity to go ahead and apply for it. We forwarded information with regards to the restricted parking district, how to apply for it through the Traffic and Transportation Department, and I'd be more than happy to speak to you after the hearing as
So
well.
then every time there's a new tenant, they have to keep applying. It's not like going to be...
No, the restricted residential parking district would allow the residents only to park on Fairview and no businesses. So,
But if there's new tenants, new residences, because it's apartment buildings.
Correct.
Then they have to keep applying every time there's...
I'm not sure. I would be more than happy to go ahead and direct you to the individuals in Traffic and Transportation who can best answer those questions.
I guess. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers?
Yeah.
Come on down.
Thank you.
Oh, and we have...
Michael Rosenbaum again?
Yeah. As I understand it, from what I looked at with the restricted parking, the people have to apply for the restricted parking permit and they have to pay a fee. That's why I asked how much the fee was. So if somebody moves into the apartment building, they would have to get, an application and get a parking fee. So I think that would answer the question that she had. Yeah. Now, again, my concern is just has to be traffic and parking on my street, Fairview Avenue mainly, and also it affects the rest of the entrances that are in the area. But once again, you said that no parking spaces would be taken away from Fairview Avenue. But if I look at your map of the deliveries and the delivery area that's going to be behind the stores on Fairview Avenue, because of the exits that are going to be there for the trucks, it seems to me that there's going to be fewer spaces in that area of Fairview Avenue, and that at least some of the spaces are going to be taken away from that. I know that those are spaces that are used by people in those buildings that are not part of this project, but are also on the same block. Also, the question I had, and I raised this question once before in a private meeting, was the diagonal parking that's in front of those buildings that are on Brand Boulevard. And I just would point out that when you come, because I do this all the time when I'm because I live on Fairview Avenue, when you come to the end of Fairview Avenue and you're on Brand Boulevard, you want to make a turn, your visibility is affected by those diagonal parking in front of that, in front of those buildings. And I just think that it's going to be a problem for all of these extra people that are going to be going through there trying to make that turn onto Brand Boulevard, either across the traffic, even more difficult because of the visibility, but also just turning with the traffic, it's going to be a problem. So that I would suggest that you consider getting rid of those diagonal parkings. Now, I know that affects the people that are in these buildings that are not part of this project. I know that some of those people already park, they have an arrangement. At least I know there's an urgent care that's on the corner there. They have an arrangement with the bank that's across the street, that's on that opposite corner of Fairview Avenue and Brand Boulevard. Yeah, it's a business bank, I think it's called. Because it's a business bank, I guess they don't have a lot of customers in there, and there's not a lot of parking in their parking area, so they seem to have an arrangement with the people that are in that building already. So that might help if you could somehow an arrangement could be made that they could use that for their parking.
Thank
You
you.
could get rid of that.
Thank you.
It would maybe make access on Fairview Avenue a little bit better.
I will ask the applicant if they would like to come back up and address any of the speaker's comments.
Just a few items. Again, the property is technically overparked for the uses that are proposed. 102 is required, 124 are being provided. So we believe the parking and the thorough review and studies of the traffic and circulation would more or less address any of the concerns that were brought up. I'd also like to mention that we did send out mailings for a community meeting to the radius that's required by the city. We had Mr. Rosenbaum show up, which was very good, informative. It allowed some dialogue to open. We also received 5 calls that were in complete support of both the projects. They couldn't wait for them to open. So if I can answer any questions you might have, that would be the end of my presentation.
I'm good.
Okay.
Great. Thank you. That said, I will take this case under submission as well. The public hearings are closed. Thank you all for coming. We're done.